While the mainstream media refuses to cover Donald Trump's cognitive decline, it is more clear than ever that Donald Trump is completely unfit for the presidency. And even members of his own administration not only recognize this, but are leaking it, as we see in a new report detailing not just how broken Donald Trump's brain is and how extreme he's been acting, but who in his White House, including Stephen Miller, is looking to take advantage of the president's cognitive problems. We're going to get into it all, but before we do, I want to start with another shocking report detailing where Donald Trump's broken brain is getting information to make decisions about the escalating conflict in the Middle East. Watching Fox News convinced Trump to embrace escalation between Israel and Iran, per shocking New York Times report. The New York Times dropped a bombshell report on Tuesday detailing Donald Trump's shifting attitude on Israel and Iran's conflict, noting that Fox News coverage helped to sway him. The report explains that Trump's rapid shift in posture from wanting to negotiate with the Iranians a nuclear deal to now seriously considering sending American aircrafts in to help refuel Israeli combat jets and to try to take out Iran's deep underground nuclear site at Fordo with 30,000-pound bombs. Times' Jonathan Swan and Maggie Haberman, as well as others, contributed to a report that lays out the timeline of Trump's thinking for the last several weeks. As the report wraps up, the Times explains how Trump went from being hesitant about the Israeli bombings of Iranian nuclear facilities late last week to wanting to share in the credit. When he woke up on Friday morning, his favorite TV channel, Fox News, was broadcasting wall-to-wall imagery of what it was portraying as Israel's military genius, and Trump could not hesitate claiming some credit for himself. In phone calls with reporters, Mr. Trump began hinting that he played a bigger role behind the scenes in the war than people realized. Privately, he told some confidants that he was now leaning towards a more serious escalation, going along with Israel's earlier request that the United States deliver powerful bunker-busting bombs to destroy Iran's nuclear facility at Fordo. Our foreign policy is being driven by the Fox propaganda network, delivering slop to our mentally declining president. Does that make anyone feel good? Well, if you're concerned, don't worry, because Pete Hegseth is also 5 martinis deep, so we really got it under control. But as Donald Trump is so easily swayed by any little bit of information, we also see Stephen Miller capitalizing on this, as a new report reveals that Donald Trump's backtrack on immigration is actually going forward. And it's key context to this new report out of the White House, a whistleblower report about his current state. Let's start with what Jessica Tarlov had to say detailing this report, and then we're going to check it out.
And I think that the images of the masked agents, pulling a candidate for mayor and our comptroller aside are going to be very resonant with folks. Importantly, Donald Trump's policy on immigration seemed like it was changing a couple days ago. Remember when he posted, he said, oh, if people work in agriculture, they shouldn't get picked up. And if people work at hotels, et cetera, like he used to employ a lot of people at his properties. And it seems like Stephen Miller is back in charge. And I think that that's a bad thing for the country. And I think it's a bad thing for the president's immigration policy, because that flies in the face of where public opinion is. I don't know why Trump has completely ceded control to Miller in terms of this, but it's not a good look, and it's not going to float well with the governors that run states that have a lot of these people that keep them in business, big agriculture states, big states with, hotels, leisure, et cetera.
But Greg, isn't that the whole point?
2 of the Trump administration's top figures overseeing Donald Trump's mass deportation plans were furious with a White House official who tried to persuade the president not to target workers in the agriculture and leisure industries. White House Deputy White House Chief of Staff Stephen Miller and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, dubbed Ice Barbie for her stylized anti-immigration photo ops, were enraged after learning that Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins had called Trump and suggested that immigration and customs enforcement agents avoid deporting longtime workers in sectors heavily reliant on migrant labor. By Monday, the Department of Homeland Security reversed course, notifying staff that the previous guidelines were scrapped and that ICE would resume raids on agricultural businesses, hotels, and restaurants. So Stephen Miller, who is the architect behind Donald Trump's disgusting and immoral immigration plan, is using his very malleable pudding brain to go forward with whatever policy he wants. He is completely controlling Trump, and it's very clear that really anyone in the administration who gets his ear can, which is incredibly scary, and why we're getting leaks out of that White House that Donald Trump is unfit. White House has insiders convinced Trump is unfit for the job, a whistleblower. Donald Trump's White House even now contains staffers convinced he is unfit to be president, a former senior administration official who famously spoke out anonymously about such concerns during Trump's first administration said, "If I was sitting with Donald Trump right now, I would say, I have friends in your White House, and some of them laying very, very low, but share some of the same concerns that I had during the first administration," Miles Taylor said. Those concerns, Taylor said, were that Trump is still the same man, but worse and emboldened, still deeply impulsive, but impulsive without checks and balances around him. Taylor was the chief of staff in the Department of Homeland Security when he wrote the September 2018 op-ed for the New York Times saying that he was part of the resistance to Trump, a group of senior officials concerned that the president was not fit to govern and dedicated to checking his wilder impulses. The piece was published under the byline of Anonymous, as was a subsequent book, A Warning. The publication stoked intense speculation as to who the writer was. Taylor identified himself shortly before the 2020 election and became a hate figure for Trump and his followers. Trump was widely reported to have been stopped from numerous extreme actions in his first term by so-called adults in the room, appointed to key roles such as his defense secretary, a highly respected former U.S. Marine Corps general. In Trump's second term, though, surrounded by loyalists such as Fox News host turned defense secretary Pete Hegseth, the president is not seen to be subject to any such constraints. Taylor said the people around Trump aren't trying to talk him out of doing bad things. If anything, they are demonstrating fealty at every turn to the leader, and that's resulting in a lot of bad decisions getting made. Now, most of the folks I know are on, of course, the national security side of the White House, and some of them still think they can keep their hand on the wheel. And I would prefer some of those people and posts I'm thinking about than others who might want to replace them. But I think people of conscience in this administration know that they are an endangered species. Taylor described the immense power enjoyed by Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, widely seen to be the most influential presidential aide, particularly in implementing ultra-hardline immigration policy. Taylor said Miller's power was almost absolute, though Miller himself would never say that. Stephen is very, very careful to always be entirely deferential to the president, Taylor said, but I can tell you, I remember when, I think it was 2018, Stephen was growing frustrated, and he was convinced that the president, effectively at the time, to put him in charge of the broader Homeland Security policy for the administration. So even members of Donald Trump's own White House see him as a malleable and unfit figure as he continues to decline before our very eyes. And whether it is Stephen Miller trying to shape his own immigration policy or Fox spewing bile at Donald Trump that turns into our foreign policy decisions, it is all very scary, even to those in Donald Trump's administration who have pointed out just how bad things are. It is terrifying, especially as Donald Trump reverses course on his reverse course, as we previously talked about, following Stephen Miller's disgusting immigration plan that has led to mass thugs across the country being empowered to do whatever they want, including arresting a U.S. senator and now Brad Lander, the comptroller of New York City, who is currently running for mayor. And we saw that arrest earlier today. He was just released, though, and I want to hear a little bit of what Brad had to say in response.
All I tried to do was just hold Edgardo's arm and ask the ICE agents, do you have a warrant? And they would not show me the warrant. And I said I'd let go of his arm as soon as they showed it to me, and they did not show it to me, and you saw what happened. I will say they treated me just fine after that. And it is true, Governor, you know, as you just said, that the two ICE agents who detained me, one is a Pakistani Muslim immigrant who lives in Brighton Beach, and the other is an Indo-Guyanese gentleman who lives in South Ozone Park. This is what New York City is. It is the greatest immigrant city that the world has ever known. And we are not going to allow Donald Trump to wreck the rule of law, to deny people due process, and to turn our country into something that doesn't meet its obligations under international law. And so I just engaged in that tradition of accompaniment, of trying to bear witness, of trying to walk peacefully with someone, of trying to make sure that the rules are followed, and that we would know what their badge numbers were, and that we would be able to see the judicial warrant before he was detained, because we don't know where Edgardo is now. No one is able to be in touch with him. And our country is better than that. Our country is better than that. In the room where I was detained, there are posters on the wall, you know, like you have in the store, where it says, make sure you're being paid $7.25 an hour. And on the wall of the poster, it says in English, are you detained and separated from your children? And it says in Spanish, está usted detenido y separado de sus hijos. Like, that's what's on the walls of the detention room in this building. We are normalizing family separation. We are normalizing due process rights violations. We are normalizing the destruction of constitutional democracy, and we're not going to stand by and let it happen. This city, 8 million New Yorkers, 40% of them, themselves immigrants, themselves foreign-born, like those two officers. 50% of New Yorkers live in mixed status households, including 1 million children. That is the future of our city that we are fighting for, and I was proud to be out here with Immigrant ARC. I will keep coming back. I do want to say, you know, I am grateful to the governor for coming. I'm grateful to all of you for being here. I believe it is important to show up and bear witness and accompany people, and to do it in the tradition of nonviolent witness. We are not going to give Donald Trump and his goons any excuse for ratcheting up conflict or violence. It is possible to show up and protect New Yorkers and protect people who have the right to seek asylum and insist on due process, and do it in the best traditions of nonviolent witness, and show that this city, the greatest immigrant city the world has ever known, the city with that statue out in the harbor saying, send me your tired, your poor, your wretched masses yearning to breathe free, that we will do it in a way that honors that statue, that honors our traditions, that shows what New Yorkers look like. Thank you all very much.
This is the type of policy we will continue to see as Stephen Miller sinks in his talons to the pudding brain of Trump and completely controls him as the president is in cognitive decline. He is unfit, and those around him are seizing on that opportunity. It is the reason Elon Musk had so much power in the White House, and why billionaires were so happy to put Trump back in, because they can control him all they want. That is incredibly scary, and we're going to continue to call it out, even if the mainstream media won't. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around at the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. You can also subscribe to my new Substack account. We're going to be posting all the time a little bit of different content than what's going up on the YouTube channel, but I really hope you check it out. That link will be below and in the top comment. And until next time, I'll see you soon.